Dave Fight. I'm the chairman of the Dauphin County Republican Committee. To my left is County Commissioner Jeff Haste, and to my right is Pat Conahan. He is the owner of 717 Armory on Derry Street. He is also the former veteran of the Marine Corps. We're here today to talk about some differences. The picture tells 1,000 words, and I think that picture right there tells 1,000 words. Throughout this campaign, the whispers have always been that George Scott and Scott Perry there's so many similarities. Their names sound the same, both from York County, they both served in the military. But that picture right there shows just how different they are. Just shows the difference between a responsible congressman and an irresponsible person who's trying to run for Congress. He can say what he wants about this picture being a moment of celebration, about a moment of carefree, just trying to have a good time and celebrate a victory. But I can tell you right now, the people in this office, when election night comes and that guy is defeated, there's not going to be one of us doing anything like that in that picture. I'm a proud gun owner, lifelong member of the NRA. I was in this office yesterday with my sweatshirt on. Proud gun owner. There's nothing like that anywhere from me. I've never had a picture taken like that of me. I would never do something like that. Neither would any of these guys up here. George Scott's whole campaign has been a lesson in irresponsibility. From his cozying up to Nancy Pelosi, to his advocating for single-payer health care, to pictures like this. The visuals speak for themselves. He's irresponsible now, in the past, and would be in the future if he went to Congress. And we cannot allow that to happen. I want to turn it over to Commissioner Jeff Haste, let him say a few words as well.
You know, when I was asked to come say a few words, I started reflecting on the differences between the two candidates. And as our chairman said, there are at least perceived similarities between the two. But when you really look at it, there are two words that describe each individual. And I think with Congressman Perry, it is responsible. And I think with candidate Scott, it is irresponsible. And again, I think there's a lot of hypocrisy that's gone on in this campaign. Again, this is an individual who in the primary went out, was happy to burn his gun, was basically trying to put his finger in what I'll call Central Pennsylvania values. Then he goes around this fall and wants to talk about his military service, being a pastor, and all kinds of things. And I do give him credit, so that I do give him credit for his years of service. I will never take that away from someone for serving our country, so I thank him for that. But I think what he has done since then is very hypocritical. Again, as our chairman said, Nancy Pelosi has her and her supporters have put money in here. He has followed her policies now. All you hear him talk about is single care payer, which we know is not a good program for us. We've talked to people, whether it be in England, whether we talk to people in Canada, and they'll talk about the system and they'll talk about the waiting list. And we'll talk about how people of critical need have to wait for service. You know, we don't have that system right now. Our system's not perfect. We can continue to work on that. Scott Perry has actually been an advocate trying to make sure that we have quality health care available for all of our residents. It's not the single payer method. It's more of a free market method, but he's working to make sure that that is there. And then the other thing with this that I really took issue with is I too am a proud NRA Second Amendment guy. And I've been involved with that with my own children, with others, and there is never a point in time in any of the safety training that NRA does that you point a gun at someone else, at their head, at any part of their body, and you just don't do that. It is the #1 safety rule of the NRA training. When you have a weapon in your hand, you make sure you know where it's pointed at all times. And that's whether you're having fun or whatever. And you don't see people in the NRA, and you don't see qualified gun owners doing something like that. And then I'm really shocked to find out that it's a man who had military training who thought that was okay. And then when I saw his comments, and he said, we really shouldn't put much credence in this. That happened 29 years ago. That's true. And about 6 weeks ago, many of us Republicans were questioning, you know, what the value was of what somebody did 30 years ago. However, people like Mr. Scott, Nancy Pelosi, were trying to make sure that anybody's past 30 years ago or longer was held accountable and is something you should be living up to today. How can it be that they want to hold Republicans accountable for what they did 30 years ago, but when it's a Democrat candidate, it's something we're not supposed to worry about? Again, I think that just goes to the irresponsibility of the two candidates. It goes to the hypocrisy that's going on right now. Say one thing and do something else, but hold the other party accountable. And I think it'll be good on election night to send people like Mr. Scott back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hayes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, my name is Patrick Conahan. I'm the proud owner of 717 Armory, as well as a United States Marine Corps veteran. And that's who I'm here to really represent today. Looking at this picture is the veteran community. When I look back at my career in the Marine Corps and my combat deployments in the Marine Corps and my time spent in the Marine Corps, I was surrounded by some of the most outstanding leaders I've ever been surrounded by. I feel that they have firmly taken a deep foundation in my upbringing to become not only a man, but a leader of my own employees, now moving out of the military. When I served in the Marine Corps every day, we were in the infantry, and the firearm was a tool that we utilized to complete our missions, to complete our jobs. When I looked at this picture and I first saw this picture, my first thought was that, you know, I was dumbfounded. Not because of who it was, because of what the picture was itself. Like Commissioner Hayes said, as an NRA member as well, you treat every weapon as loaded, and you never point a weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. In my mind right there, that picture says more than the volume of words that I could ever speak to you today. After our missions, you know, Mr. Scott said that they were blowing off steam, celebrating a victory. Well, Mr. Scott, from my personal experiences and the men that led me and the men that I've led, never once was this ever even a thought that crossed our mind to pose for a picture like this. This right here is why people don't like guns. This right here sends a very loud message to a very hurting, large community of people in this country. 22 veterans a day commit suicide. It's a number that I personally take very close to heart, and I personally take every effort into turning that number to at least 21. A veteran that is on the fence at any given time, you don't know whether it's 2 a.m. or it's 2 p.m. It doesn't really matter. You never know when he decides to give up his fight. If that veteran looks to the social media platforms, to the media platforms that provide information at the swipe of a finger or a click of a button, and sees that picture right there, who's not to say that today's day goes from 22 to 23 because of one picture? And for you, Mr. Scott, that is your doing, your choice, your photograph. With that being said, you know, I really take offense to it personally as well. My nature of my business is to teach, is to educate, is to show people that there is a correct way to utilize a firearm, enjoy a firearm, and have a good time with your firearm. We teach children, we teach adults, first-time shooters to the most experienced law enforcement agents down at 717 Armory. Never once does any one of our pupils, any one of our customers, any one of our students, will you ever see an example of mishandling a firearm, not to any degree, but especially not to that degree. So again, I want to thank the Dauphin County GOP here for having me. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioner, thank you again.
Just to wrap up, I want to thank you again for coming. As you all know, George Scott has a campaign event this afternoon with Vice President Biden. We're asking for answers on this. We want Vice President Biden to explain why he supports this guy. We want every other Democrat in Central PA who's standing with this guy to explain their reasoning. How can they stand next to this guy and say he should be a congressman in the United States Congress in Washington, D.C.? Central Pennsylvania deserves better than this, and we expect to get better on November 6th. Thank you all for coming.